من هضم الثورة والطاري من هضم الثورة والطاري من هضم هبوب الأعصار من هضم. Wow, that
Well,
was,
you're the one
that was certainly now the reason why I actually started with this song.
good song.
Reason why, because the mood has very much changed. Hi, Waleed on Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us. Because the mood has really changed in Palestine. That people are really very upset about what's going on. The new government has come in, and we have that new group, the Lions from Nablus. And there's going to be actually a poetry reading dedicated to them by my friend Farid Batar, from whose family was generations in East Jerusalem. And Farid is organizing an event at West Beth Artist Housing, where I live, for many Palestinian poets and musicians. And I'm going to be showing my film about my visit this summer to Hebron and to Hebron and to Palestine and Area C, which was a very incredible program of travel where I thought I knew a lot about what was going on in Palestine. And then when I visited Hebron and particularly Area C, which is run by the Israeli military, it was very disturbing. So I'm going to be sending out announcements. The event is on January 19th. So I'll be sending invitations to Brooklyn for peace and for everybody else. Good morning, Iqbal Hussein. Welcome to Zoom Palestine. So we're going to share our screen if I can get it to work. I'm working on a different computer, which is not always easy for me to figure out how to what I'm doing. But anyhow, let's see if I can get my screen to share with this very interesting, very short interview with both Israelis. Here we go. Let's see if I can share my screen. My camera is bonkers. I don't know if you can see me jumping up and down. One, which is okay here. Let's share screen, and let's see if I can find what I want to look at. Also let's see if this works. Okay, yeah, here we go. Can you see my screen? All right, here's an interesting little interview. It has some Israelis who are very upset about the new government. And I think people, who are pro-Palestine have to realize that there are many Israelis who are really very much against what's going on. So let's listen to this, these interviews. They're both with Israelis and from the right and the left and Palestinians. It's a very interesting little interview. So let's hear it. Why is it so low? Let me see if I can get this louder.
בגלל שקמה היום הממשלה הכי חשוכה, הכי גזענית, הכי רעה שיכולנו לדמיין שתקום. على الشعب الفلسطيني في ظل الحكومة الفاشية الإسرائيلية القادمة أن يتوحد ويكون على قلب رجل واحد. هذه الحكومة الإسرائيلية الفاشية المتعددة في هو تدمير الشعب الفلسطيني. هي كلها كانت حكومات متطرفة وتابعة على بعضها. ولا مرة كان في حكومة لا سلام ولا هذا عدو غاشم ما بين في الأساس القتل والتهجير والتهويد والاستيطان وهذا ما في غير.
Okay, so the sound wasn't good on that, but I hope you caught that there were the first Israeli said she was ashamed of being Israeli. Okay. Oh, here's the sound. Let me see if I can turn up the sound on this. I'm here today because the darkest, most racist, evil government that we could have ever imagined will be formed. Palestinians says under the incoming Israeli fascist government, the Palestinians must unite in one heart. This fascist Israeli government is adept at oppressing and destroying the Palestinian people. The Israeli government all Israeli governments have been extremists. They're all connected. It was never a government of peace. This is a brutal enemy which only knows the killing and displacement. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so this is an example of the situation now in Israel, where you have many people, Israelis on the left, who are appalled and horrified by this new Israeli government. And you also have Israelis on the far right who are celebrating it. So this interview here, which is going to include some of the far right views. So let me see if I can get this to full screen. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so let's look at this interview. Okay.
As Israel's who right-wing government's policy priorities. Our correspondent in Israel, Jody Cohen, was joined by member of the Knesset, Alma Cohen, who is the deputy minister in PM office. Listen in.
Do you think annexation of Judea and Samaria, what the Palestinians call the West Bank, will that happen? That was part of religious Zionism's coalition agreement with Netanyahu.
My lady, I'm really protesting about this fact. The Judea and Samaria is ours, okay? Everyone can open the old Bible and take care of their, look what is our belongings. We are not here to harm anyone, even though the Palestinians. But, you know, the semantics have to be that Judea and Samaria is ours, not no one else. If someone have is have another opinion, I really invite him. Open the Holy Bible and read that. Okay, this is a right on the you can think otherwise after you read the Bible. This is our kushan on the earth on the land of Israel, the land of our ancestors, and we will keep our land and all the citizens, all the people here.
What would you say to ease the concerns of the people standing outside, for example, who are protesting the new government? What would you say is the unifying message for them?
My message for them and for all the Israeli citizens we are come to work for everyone. We don't have any kind of privilege to take care to one and the other not. We will work hard for all the citizens of Israel, even those who don't choose us, who don't elect us. It's okay from us. We will take care of them. We love them. We hug them. This day is a celebration today for the democracy, but in this day we have to say that again, we are here to serve all the citizens of Israel.
What do you see as the ultimate solution to getting peace with the Palestinian people?
The peace is very, is very high priority in the Judaism. But you have to say that clearly. We don't have partner in the other side. You can't, Abu Mazen. You can't talk with us about peace and give money about to the people, to the killer who kills more Jews. This is a very problematic things. I hope that in the next generation we have grown leaders, but truly leaders, brave people that we want peace. But peace will have to come from a power, not from the from the side of the weak. Israel can't make peace with anyone as long as she don't have the power. We will keep the power, we'll keep the control. This is our city, our land, sorry, not anyone else.
Wow, so much for recognizing a two-state solution, or that there are Palestinians who also have rights to the land. So we're going to, Nina, when I first got on, when I was trying to get this to all work, Nina mentioned about all the events, the recent events that have been happening that are really bad. And my go to find out what's going on source is the Electronic Intifada. So we're going to share some articles from the Electronic Intifada. And Nina, if you know other stuff, please share with us. And I didn't know, when I read this article, I didn't know about this, but evidently Israel killed 3 children as the new year started. So we're going to read about that. I think that the violence is just going to increase, unfortunately. So let's see what happened. Here's a picture. And I apologize, I'm not using my regular computer, so things are going to be a little rough. All right. So mourners carry the body of a 15-year-old Adam Ayat during his funeral in Deisha refugee camp near the West Bank city of Bethlehem on the 3rd of January. So that was just a few days ago. In just the first few days of the new year, Israel killed 4 Palestinians, including 3 children. Israeli troops killed a 16-year-old boy in the Balata refugee camp in the occupied West Bank city of Nablus overnight on Thursday. And Fareed Battar has written a lot of recent poetry about Nablus. You know, Nablus has been under attack daily, well, actually nightly, where they have daily night raids into Nablus, and it's creating a very dangerous and horrible situation. And I think you have to understand that even if you don't get killed, you are profoundly traumatized and affected by these raids because you live in constant fear and terror of them. And I can vouch for how stressful it is to visit Israel and Jerusalem and the West Bank because you're always nervous that something's going to happen and that your life can be ended. So it's not just the event of the shooting, but the entire situation, which is deadly and violent and vicious. I'm going to make this a little bigger so our Facebook people can see it a little better on their screens. So I think that we have to understand that it's just not an event, but a whole atmosphere, a zeitgeist of fear and anxiety. And this has terrible health effects on people. This affects blood pressure, it affects heart disease. And remember that little boy who the soldiers were chasing had a heart attack while he was being chased. So we have to understand that the entire situation is violent, whether there's actual shooting or not, that the atmosphere and the mood is violent. So the Defense for Children International in Palestine identified the boy as Amr Ghazai Zaytoun. He was shot with a bullet to the head. On Tuesday, Israeli occupation forces, accompanied by undercover Mustarabim agents, invaded Daesh refugee camp near West Bank city of Bethlehem to capture a camp resident. Mustarabim present themselves as Palestinians. So they disguise themselves as Palestinians in order to capture, injure, or infiltrate groups of civilians. Camp residents confronted the troops, according to DCIP, and were shot at with live ammunition, rubber-coated steel bullets, and tear gas canisters. During the raid, soldiers positioned themselves on rooftops in order to place snipers there, according to a field investigation by the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. 5 children gathered and threw stones at soldiers on the rooftop, as eyewitnesses said. The soldiers then opened fire on the children and another group of men, injuring 2 children who were taken to a nearby hospital. One of the injured was 15-year-old boy Adam Issam Ayad. He was shot with at least 1 bullet in the back of his shoulder. He later died of his wounds for throwing stones. This is really disgraceful. punitive demolition. Israeli soldiers invaded Kfir Dan in the northern West Bank on January 2nd to demolish the homes of two Palestinians accused of killing an Israeli soldier in September. Ahmed Ayed Ahmed and Abdul Rahman Hani Ahmed reportedly opened fire on Israeli soldiers near Jenin that month using improvised Carl rifles, killing Marfala, the deputy commander of the Special Reconnaissance Unit in the Nahal Brigade. Both men were killed by the Israeli army. Israeli forces arrived in Kfar Dan to destroy the men's family homes as punishment for their relatives. Collective punishment of this kind is a war crime. Say that again. Collective punishment of this crime is a war crime that Israel only commits against the families of Palestinians accused of harming Israelis, never against the families of Israelis who harm Palestinians. And we see right here the incredible criminal nature of these and unfairness of these demolitions. Israeli troops forced the occupants of two houses as well as 10 other families to vacate in preparation for the punitive demolition. Israeli forces completely destroyed one home, leaving 3 families, a total of 17 people, homeless. They destroyed 2 floors of the other house. Villagers gathered to confront the soldiers, throwing stones at them. Troops responded with live fire, tear gas, stun grenades, and rubber-coated steel bullets. 6 people were injured, including Fuad Mahmoud Abed, 17, who later died in the hospital. According to a field investigation by BCIP, an Israeli sniper stationed on the 2nd floor of a house shot the boy in the abdomen, pelvis, and legs. There were some pictures here, but they're not loading. Now let's see what's going on in Jerusalem. Well, we've been reading about Jerusalem, so let's hear what they say. I know that Netanyahu, some of them made a visit, some government people made a visit to the Temple Mount. Israel appears bent on keeping up the same rate of killings in the first week of this year as a particularly violent 2022. Last year saw the highest number of Palestinians killed by Israeli forces and settlers in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, since the Second Intifada nearly 2 decades ago. Violence and provocations against Palestinians have certainly not abated since Benjamin Netanyahu's new coalition government was sworn in last month. In a highly provocative act, Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir of the supremacist Jewish Power Party stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Tuesday. This move drew rebukes from Israel's closest allies, including the United States and Arab countries, because it threatens a status quo that otherwise serves only Israelis' interests. And King Abdullah in Jordan, who's charged with preserving the holy sites, has issued warnings in messages to Israel. Such incursions are associated with the so-called temple movement that promotes Jewish visits to Al-Aqsa in occupied East Jerusalem as part of a gradual takeover process by settlers. The ultimate aim of the movement, openly declared by many of its adherents, is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and the replacement with a Jewish temple. And actually, I have some funny images that I used in a film that I did of paintings showing the destruction of showing the temple, the new temple coming out of the sky, while Al-Aqsa Mosque and Dome of the Rock got blown up. So we have a situation where the peace does not look like it's going to come about in 2023. And why this is significant to pay attention to what's going on is because there's a new mood of resistance on the Palestinian side. Previously, Palestinians have been pretty passive, but this new group called the Lions of Nablus, they reject Hamas and Hezbollah, and they reject the PA, the Palestinian Authority. So these are young kids who are fed up with all of the groups, all of the Palestinian groups. They don't want to have anything to do with any of them. They are a new group and they are dedicated to resistance. So we're going to see what's going to happen this year with them. The other article that's of interest is that the UN court again is talking about the illegality of Israeli occupation has been referred to the UN court. Here's a picture of Israeli settlers attempt to establish a new settlement in the northern West Bank in October 2015. Now, this has been constantly a problem, and already with the new government, the settlers are planning to expand. So last week, the UN General Assembly voted in favor of requesting an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on the legality of Israel's occupation of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza. The resolution asks the court to set out the legal consequences of Israel's violation of the Palestinians' right to self-determination and its prolonged occupation, settlement, and annexation of Palestinian land since 1967. This includes, quote, measures aimed at altering the demographic composition, which we would call also Judaization, getting rid of non-Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and putting Jews in, character and status of Jerusalem, and the adoption of discriminatory legislation and measures. The resolution also asks the court to determine, quote, the legal consequences that arise for all states in the United Nations as a result of its findings. This is very significant for the boycott issue, because if they can decide that, if the court can decide that this settlement is illegal and all of these issues that they're putting on discriminatory, etc., this validates the boycott issue, which most of the EU and the United States rejects BDS. And the other thing I want to mention is that since the West has rejected BDS as a tool to protest, which is a nonviolent tool advocated by Gandhi and South Africa, Desmond Tutu, and all of the great people who have used, Martin Luther King, have used boycott as a weapon against oppression. But now that boycott's forbidden, you have these young kids who decide that violence is the only thing they can left for them. And so what the violence that's going to be happening this year is really, you can put the blame on the West because they have forbidden nonviolent methods to be used. All right, so the resolution asks the court to determine all legal consequences that arise for all states and the United Nations as a result of this one. So that's the key phrase. This is where BDS is involved in this new move. The International Court of Justice, the UN's tribunal for settling legal disputes submitted by states and requests for advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it through the UN system. Though both are based in The Hague, the International Court of Justice is a separate body from the International Criminal Court, which opened an investigation into the human rights situation in the West Bank and Gaza Strip last year. Advisory opinions issued by the ICJ are non-binding. Now, I didn't realize that the International Court of Justice was separate from the International Criminal Court. So that's very important, but it's probably going to be ignored. And what do you think about it, Nina? You have a lot of good expertise on these issues. What do you think? It's going to make.
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's non-binding. It's the UN. The West tends, or the United States tends to say that the UN is biased against Israel. I think a lot depends on the United States response to the situation, which I don't see right now as being particularly helpful. I have a feeling that the Biden administration wants to ride out this new government, thinking that Netanyahu will not last
Yeah,
for too long, and they're waiting for him to lead, to be they're waiting for this government to collapse, but I don't think that it's going to be that much better, even if this government does collapse.
yeah. That was the point of the Palestinian in the video we just saw. He said all the governments are violent, corrupt. So a lot of them think it's not going to make that big of a difference. Thanks, Nina, for your input. So there's another article here. There's some pictures for Palestine. This is kind of sad. The family of the baby that was killed, you remember, is now worried about violence again. So a family of baby killed by settlers fear fresh attacks. This is Ahmed Darwabish does not like to look back. He has a good reason. The 12-year-old survived one of the worst settler attacks in recent years when his family home in the village of Duma in the occupied West Bank district of Nablus was firebombed by Israeli settlers in 2015. Ahmed's 18-month-old brother Ali was burned to death. You all remember that. I remember that. That was a big thing. So here's Ahmed Dawabash in a hardcore. He's a real Madrid fan playing soccer. His father Saad died last week from his injuries. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Riham Hamid's mother died a month ago. A month after that, his father died a week later after the incidents and the injuries, and then his mother died. So he was 4 at the time. He was left an orphan, sustained severe burns all over the body. Now, let me say this, as a burn survivor myself, and I have burns only on 20% of my body, that your body never gets over a burn. And you have burn scars that last your entire life. My burn was in like 2013, and I'm still getting pain from it. I still experience pain and either sometimes itching, sometimes pain. As I'm talking now, it's starting to hurt me. And it's been a long time. So this child is alive, but he's scarred deeply, both mentally, psychologically, and physically. And the attack still casts a dark shadow over life in the village. According to Nasser Dolbash, 48, the uncle who is now raising Ahmed, relations between the villages in Duma and the settlers surrounding them have gotten worse. And since 2015, the village has been attacked at least a dozen times. A dozen more times. As for Ahmed, he's just trying to put it behind him. The attack doesn't affect me anymore because I don't allow myself to think about it. He told the Electronic Intifada from his uncle's home. He attempts to twirl a football in his fingers, catching it before he goes to the ground. He still has burn scars across the right side of his face and across his body. He has had years of reconstructive surgery and skin grafts, and his treatment is far from over. And I can testify to how difficult and painful and traumatic these treatments are. So he says he's not bothered by the attack anymore, except that his body is still suffering pain from it. Every 6 months, he must undergo laser skin treatment for the scars, along with hair restoration surgeries and more skin grafts. The family received special military permission to access this treatment at Israeli hospital. We don't feel happy going inside Israel, Nasser says, but it's the only Israeli hospitals that have the medical equipment, so we have no other choice. As tensions soar across the occupied West Bank, the UN finding that 2022 has been the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank since it started counting fatalities in 2005. The Dawabash family is left to fend for themselves. We are terrified. Something like this could happen again. Nasser told the Electronic Intifada. There's no authority here that can protect us from them. We only have God. Now, I want to make a comment on that statement from my research and my contacts. that when they say there's no authority, they mean the Palestinian Authority, the PA. Police are pretty useless. The military are pretty useless in protecting people, both from crime by other Palestinians, as well as crime from the settlers. And the IDF, the Israelis are not going to do anything. So the about crime from other Palestinians, Palestinian on Palestinian crime, and there's big crime rings functioning in Palestine, because the situation is so desperate and it's kind of the Wild West in most of Palestine. There's no real enforcement of law, and it's a very dangerous situation because there's nobody to protect people. You're kind of on your own. It's a Wild West. The family's home still stands as it was, blackened with ash and dotted with Ahmed's parents' blankets and belongings in the room where they sustained the burns that would eventually kill them. On the walls, somebody scribbled, "We will never forget." We decided to leave the home this way to act as a proof and testament to the violence these settlers have inflicted on us, Nasser said. The ringleader of the attack was then 21-year-old Amran Ben Uliel, who was at the time living in a bus in the Adiad settlement outpost, which overlooks Dama, another illegal outpost, even illegal for Israel. He was allegedly part of the Hilltop Youth, an extremist and religious nationalist group of Israeli settlers who agitate for Jewish theocracy from which Gentiles, non-Jews, are expelled. And these are the people who got elected in his Israeli government. This is who they are. While all Israeli settlements in the Palestinian territory are considered illegal under international law, the Israeli government only considers outposts illegal. It nonetheless provides them with state-funded protection and access to water and electricity. Here's a picture of the charred Dawah Basha house as a testament. This is what their house still looks like today from the burn. This is so vicious. They are retroactively legalized, and the new Israeli coalition government has reportedly pledged, here we go, to confer legal status on all remaining outposts in its first 60 days in power. So all these crazies, and they are crazy. I mean, I've been in Palestine, I've seen them, I've talked to them. They are really crazies. They are, they're really dangerous, and their outposts are going to be legalized during the first 60 days while this new government is in power. The Hilltop Youth are fiercely anti-Palestinian. They are accused of being behind the so-called price tag attacks, in which settlers target Palestinians and their properties in revenge for outposts being demolished by the Israeli military. This includes Muslims and Christians. These are the people who spit at priests, who slash priest tires and nuns, and they just desecrated a bunch of Christian graves. There was an article I saw that they desecrated a bunch of Christian graves. So Ben Uliel was represented by lawyer Itmar Ben Gvir. Oh, great. Now the ultra-right leader of the Jewish Power Party, which is set to become a national security minister. Wonderful. A newly created position in Netanyahu's latest, most extreme coalition government. So that's great. So this crazy, violent lawyer is now going to be in the government. Well, that's news. That's interesting. According to prosecutors, Ben Uliel began his journey tonight from Yishuv Hadad, a nearby settler outpost. He staked out homes in Duma's attack, first throwing a Molotov cocktail into an empty house. Then he moved on to the Dawah Basha's family home. So this describes the attack. And they're still attacking. And there's very rarely any sentences for Jewish settlers for crimes committed against Palestinians. So they know that they're very vulnerable and they're very frightened and afraid. This is a picture of Ahmed with his grandmother Satir and his uncle Nasser. So Duma has had its share of this increase in settler violence. On the 26th of June, a car near Duma was set on by settlers and armed with metal batons. They smashed the car's windshield and the side window and pepper sprayed the 2 men inside. And the same day, a couple with their 3-year-old daughter and 1-month-old infant were also attacked by settlers standing beside an Israeli military jeep, who of course did nothing. The settlers kicked their cars, smashed the windows and front headlight with a baton and pepper sprayed them. So the whole fight over the rights of the land, as you heard that, Israelis say that they really own Judah and Samaria. And Ahmed says when they said, well, he's a child, he's still anxious and nervous with tensions rise with settlers. He's a child after all, Nasser said, his uncle. But Ahmed promptly interrupted. I'm not a child. And I'm not scared of them, the settlers. They have guns, but we're the ones with the rights to this land. So what's there to be scared of? Good for him. We're going to read the last article on the in this list, which goes to the heart of what we were talking about. Trouble ahead as Israel swears in the new government. So that's kind of the theme of today and the theme for thinking about 2023 as a year of trouble. Okay, trouble ahead as Israel swears in the new government. The new coalition was sworn in December 29th. And Thursday, how do we describe it? Rightist, ultra-rightist, ultra-rightist, extremist, racist, apartheid. Any of all of these descriptions could accurately apply. This is a government that intends to legalize settlement outposts. That is, make them legal under Israeli law rather than international law, under which all settlements in occupied territory are illegal. So it considers, in the words of Israel's perennial Prime Minister Netanyahu, that the Jewish people have an exclusive and unquestionable right to all areas of the land of Israel. These include the Golan Heights and Judea and Samaria, better known as the West Bank, all occupied territory. According to one set of people's primacy over another in any context, but especially in an area with population parity, while unashamedly sticking the middle finger up to international law, would normally be considered extremist at best, conservatively outright racist. The problem with applying these epithets is they create a sense that this new government is somehow a departure from past Israeli governments. Aha, it is not. Same as the old boss. It's not long ago Israel was set to annex a swath of occupied territory under a previous Netanyahu-led government when former U.S. President Donald Trump was in charge. Trump's peace plan was widely derided and annexation plans were shelved, even if Israel won U.S. recognition for its 1981 annexation of Golan Heights in contravention of international law, which forbids acquisition of territory by force. That didn't deter the formation of an anything but Netanyahu coalition that may have included an Arab party, but it was also led by Naftali Bennett, a former head of the Yesha Council, which oversees Israeli settlements in occupied territory, who opposed equal rights, promoted settlement construction, and bragged about killing Arabs. In the coming days and weeks, there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing and bromides about Israel losing its soul. Friendly reminder here that Palestinians have long been saying that this has been the logical extension of the Zionist settler colonial project by Maher Nasser. Such policies are also not merely a recent phenomenon of Israel's annexation plans to the West Bank. Began the minute Jewish settlement there got properly underway, which was immediately after the 1967 occupation. After all, why move civilians if armed settlers can be described that way into military occupied territory? There's no intention of holding on to that territory. And this is a problem with Area C. The military Area C has huge settlements in it. And a lot of them are very old. They go back to 67. In terms of 1967 occupied territory, the new government promises more of the same. Perhaps more loudly and more obviously, the assertion that the territory is the exclusive, unquestionable property of the Jewish people certainly goes further than even Israel's discriminatory nation state law. But welcome, Enki, more people on Facebook. But the same nonetheless. Will Israel formally annex more territory? It might through Netanyahu, though Netanyahu, as usual, talks a bigger game than he plays. He's already tried to reassure allies that it will be business as usual, but there are some differences. The expansion of powers of the new National Security Ministry under Itamar Ben-Gvir, remember he was the lawyer for the defending the kid who killed that family in Nablus, head of the supremacist Jewish Power Party, includes more control over Israel's police. Watch out, Palestinians inside the 1948 boundaries, as well as the transfer to the ministry of the so-called border police, usually deployed against Palestinians in occupied territory. This is really bad. There's another blurring of distinction between Israel inside 1948 boundaries, minus the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, and the 1967 occupied territories. All remember the exclusive domain of the Jewish people. Moreover, Ben-Gvir's open support for Jewish prayer of the Al-Aqsa compound is bound to become a source of serious tension. And here's some tweets from him. The appointment of, this is another big problem, of Bezalel Smotrich of the Religious Zionist Party, also Jewish supremacist, as finance minister means settlers will also not lack for cash. In addition, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have lobbied to increase government control over Israel's judiciary. This is really dangerous, folks. This paves the way for the political cancellation of still ongoing corruption charges against Netanyahu, as well as ending a clearly badly observed ban on parliamentarians who incite racism. And actually, the reason this is so bad is that the courts have often been the liberals who have sided with Palestinians against a lot of settler violence and Israeli violence. This will now change that. The transfer to the Defense Ministry, meanwhile, of the power to appoint legal counsel to the branch of the military overseeing the occupation is a further step towards unifying Israel with the West Bank. It also signals a significant step towards annexation and towards consolidating Israel's apartheid regime in the West Bank, according to several human rights groups. Further afield, Iran now again finds itself in crosshairs. Netanyahu has appointed Zazi Hanegbi as head of Israel's Security Council. Hanegbi, a veteran Iran hawk, has already said Netanyahu would authorize a unilateral strike on Iran should Washington and Tehran fail to reach a nuclear agreement. Well, the history between Iran and Jerusalem has not been good. If you look at yesterday was the Feast of the Epiphany of the three kings, the three wise men who came, most likely from Iran. When Herod, the Jewish ruler in Jerusalem, told them to come back and report where they found Jesus and make a deal, they said yes, but then they didn't go back to him because they didn't trust dealing with Jewish authority. Herod in Jerusalem, they escaped back to Iran via another route. So this is an old story of conflict between Jerusalem and Iran. Then, of course, it was Persia. Expect much hand-wringing from Israel's Western allies whose support for Israel and asserted commitment to international law are in constant contradiction. And so we'll see what this new Congress is going to do with the funds for Israel. The focus will be on Washington. The EU is a longstanding payer, not a player. In any case, was never too bothered by the early Netanyahu's governments. No doubt Biden will consider the new candidate a headache. But Biden is staunchly pro-Israel. And of course, Kamala Harris's husband is a big supporter of the settlements. When he called Netanyahu to congratulate him on his election victory, he told him, "We're brothers. We'll make history together." I hear that, I want to throw up. The U.S. also has far bigger things on its plate with Russia and Ukraine, the immediate priority, and China and the long-term one. Absent serious conflagration and assuming Netanyahu is not interested in opening any division with the U.S. and can exert control over people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, pursuing the usual annexation by stealth apartheid policies could suit both parties. Israel's newfound Arab friends may also find their position harder to defend, and suggestions that Saudi Arabia might sign a normalization agreement to stave off impending annexations should be harder for Riyadh to contemplate, given the little impact of Israel's behavior on the Abraham Accords. Palestinians will pay the price as usual, and perhaps the Palestinian Authority will pay the ultimate price. Reduced to the role of dispenser of international aid and security subcontract, the PA leadership has long been taken for granted by Israel, ignored by international actors, and disdained by most Palestinians. Not only Palestinians, but all of the Palestinians in Palestine, but all the Palestinians in diaspora, and by most Arabs, like all of Jordan. They dislike Abbas. They think he's very corrupt. He has, by the way, Abbas has several mansions in Jordan ready to flee to when he gets thrown out. He's amassed huge amounts of money, and the Jordanians see him as very corrupt, as well as all the Palestinians in Jordan. So what's the plan ahead? The fate of the PA, a state in waiting with no statehood on the horizon, will be questioned with increasing regularity and may soon reach the inevitable conclusion. And this is what the Lions of Nablus, these young kids, they want to get rid of us and the PA. Whether or not the PA collapses under the weight of its own irrelevancy, Palestinians will have to rely on substantial global popular support and hope that Israel's supremacist government will accelerate what has so far been a glacial but significant shift in popular perception in the U.S., not least among American Jews. So there's been a shift among American Jews, and Nina, what do you think is going to be the new Congress dealing with Israel, and what do you think about the shift amongst American Jews that we're talking about here?
It's hard to say. I agree. There has been somewhat of a shift among American Jews, but I don't see them as wanting either the Biden administration or Congress to take measures against Israel, whether that be sanctions or making aid conditional on Israel's human rights record. I think there's a lot of concern about the new government, but and American Jews are now more willing to criticize Israel, but I'm not sure how far they would go. I'm not, it remains to be seen. I don't think Congress is ready to take action. And that is possibly because Congress doesn't represent the people much of the time. So I'm not optimistic about the United States taking any kind of leadership role to rein this government in.
And the whole issue, what's interesting is that the far right in the Congress, the MAGA Republicans, a lot of them are very anti-Semitic. But despite their anti-Semitism, they still seem to support Israel.
They do.
So,
I think we can't count on them. They are both anti-Semitic, but pro-Israel because of their ideology about the rapture.
right, exactly. The fundamentalist lunacy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's quite an interesting contradiction. Of course, the idea behind that is that at the end of the world, when we finally have the rapture, that all the Jews are going to become Christians. And the ones that don't become Christians, then they're going to go to hell, So
Right.
they just believe that the rapture's coming, and that they're going to support Israel because all those Jews in Israel are going to become Christian. So it's really interesting, the whole the irony and the contradictions within the situation is just phenomenal. Anyhow,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
my question is, Jackie, what can we who every day are absolutely appalled by what's going on in Israel every day, what can we do, here in the US
This is
to put pressure on our government to
Cat.
respond?
Cat got on my keyboard and turned on the video. That's a very good question, but wasn't it Margaret, who was the renowned anthropologist, who said it only takes 2 or 3 people, dedicated people, to make changes in the world. And I think that when you look at the history of nonviolence, when you look at the history of revolutions, did you see the play Hamilton, by the way?
No, I haven't.
I saw it. I saw it on TV as a film. It's on I think Hulu, and my son-in-law finally gave me the passcode. But when you see the play Hamilton, it's very clear, really, that it's really a few dedicated people that make the big changes, and so what you're saying is very important, because we are not helpless. We are not that. We have a voice, and when we use our voice, particularly in groups, that's why Brooklyn for Peace is so important, because it's a group. So it's many voices, and I think the nonviolent strategies of writing letters, phone calls. I would like to go visit. I would love to have a visit with some of us to go to Charles Schumer's office. And Jerry Nadler's office, and you've got Hakeem Jeffries out there now. So, I mean, he's not my congressman. Which part of Brooklyn does he represent?
I'm not sure. He's not mine. My congressman is Clark.
Yeah.
So
but I think that with Hakeem Jeffries, I think we have an opportunity to, just keep harassing him. Every
he's
time
very pro-Israel.
I know, that's
And
why.
so is Schumer. They're going to be hard to budge. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is that, but they're politicians, so they're whores to the vote. They may have a conviction, but their main purpose is to stay in office and to be reelected. So if they smell that there's enough people out there and voters who are dissatisfied with certain policy, and I think now with the amount of I read Jewish Voice for Peace has over 2 million members in New York State alone. So I think if we can support, I think I am a member of them, but I'm gonna try to get in touch with them, because I think if it's coming from groups like Jewish Voice for Peace, which is open for any of us to join, they're very strong. I think that when they start seeing the numbers, and they, you can't charge them with anti-Semitism, they get charged with being self-hating Jews, but I think that we have a shot at making changes, because this far-right government has so alienated American Jews. And what I've been saying is what the other Palestinians say is not that big a change, but actually I'm glad they got elected, because it's finally showing the American Jews what Israelis are really like. Because I've been listening to these far-rightist, racist, horrible Israelis for years. Every time I go to Israel, I see them, I listen to them, and it's very disturbing and upsetting. And I would come home and tell my Jewish friends and my Jewish family, half of my family is Jewish, and they have forbidden me actually from saying anything about Israel, except for one cousin whose birthday is today. but the rest of them don't want me to ever say anything about Israel, and I can't tell them about what my travels are. But I've been telling American Jews for years that the Israelis are a racist apartheid and violating the ethics of Judaism. Remember, Judaism, Jews were the leaders of the civil rights movement, of human rights movement. Einstein, hated Israel. I don't know if you ever read that letter he wrote about Israel, but he said that that Israel, the Zionism, violated everything what it meant to be a Jew. So I think that the important thing is to be a voice, but particularly support the Jewish voices, because I think this is an opportunity for us. And actually, I hope this government stays in for a while and keeps doing horrible things, because this is how we can make a change.
I mean, I think we have to do what we can, so
Yeah.
that everything you're suggesting, it is certainly worth trying. Perhaps too, we need to make some effort to have some international contact with other people in I would say Europe, who also support
Yeah.
our goals, because it is after all, it seems to me it's the United States and it's international pressure
Yeah.
that will ultimately affect what happens in Israel.
Well, Ireland is a good place to
It
start.
is.
The Irish are very pro-Palestine, and there's pro-Palestine movements in England, but there's so many laws against anti-Semitism that are
Right.
draconian that all of my pro-Palestinian friends in England are really afraid to open their mouth. And France is pretty much the same way, and Germany even worse. So
It's
uh,
hard.
yeah, I agree that, but those groups in those countries also need to raise their voices. I think it's a great idea to create some kind of international coalition. What is disturbing? I just read an article yesterday. I don't know if you heard this, but the guy, I can't remember the names, but the guy used to be head of Human Rights Watch.
Yes, I did.
He just retired from Human Rights Watch, and he was pivotal. He wrote, he did so many things, both with the international courts and with declaring Israel an apartheid state, blah blah blah. And he retired, and Harvard wanted to hire him as head of their public affairs foundation or whatever, some big job at Harvard that worked with human rights. And they wouldn't hire him because they said he had anti-Israeli statements in his background. And everybody's freaking out about it because this guy was the perfect candidate for Harvard Human Rights Foundation or whatever, the School of Human Rights or whatever it was. I don't remember the details. And he was rejected because he said while he was in charge of human rights that the human rights group had been critical of Israel. Now these same people also went after the guy who was in charge of Amnesty International, because remember Amnesty International issued that amazing report that talked about the Israel as an apartheid state. So the Jewish lobby, it was Jewish groups in this country that went after this. And this is like, this affirms the kind of stereotype that Jews run everything in this country. They run everything in the world. When you can get Jewish groups to stop, probably the best candidate for human rights to run this human rights program at Harvard, that Jewish groups can stop, can block this. It's scary.
Well, it's not just the Jewish groups, although you're right. These, I would say, right-wing Jewish groups, yes, they have influence because the foreign policy establishment,
Yeah,
not just Jewish groups,
yeah,
is very pro-Israel. And
Yeah.
what the article you're talking about also pointed out was that Harvard itself is very allied with the foreign policy establishment.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's where the donations come from.
that's right. Yeah, exactly, exactly,
So,
exactly.
I mean, that's
Follow the money, follow the money.
that
That's-
is, I mean, that is what we're up against.
Yeah,
Both the Jewish groups, the Jewish lobby, and the foreign policy establishment, which
Yeah.
is, you know, which is not exclusively Jewish,
No.
but also is
pro-Israel, you know.
very pro-Israel. It is
Economic
difficult.
ties, the economic ties are.
Economic ties are phenomenal. I mean, Harvard University is basically, I think we'd have to consider it pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Nothing, no leeway there
Yeah,
outside of, no real leeway for any kind of
yeah, yeah,
important criticism of Israel.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, let's think about what we can do, and we know that you know, that human society can change, and that with some strong people that can make a difference and can make change. And I think there's enough Jews also who want change. The other issue I didn't mention is the gay community, LGBT, the gay community, that the new government now is planning draconian anti-gay laws. And that's a very good lobby to enlist in this. So I think there's, as the government proceeds, there's going to be a lot of people in this country who can be mobilized together and form a very broad coalition.
It's also women,
Yeah,
women too.
absolutely,
I mean, I had seen some article about how it's going to set women back.
absolutely. But
Um,
not allowing the them in the army to be near the ones who are the Orthodox ones who are coming in the army. They're segregating the women in the Israeli army.
Yeah, and I think there's something about segregation of praying as well,
Yeah, well,
something like that.
yeah. Well, there's always been a problem with the wall. The women, the men have one part of the wall, the women have the other part. Of the
Yeah,
and the women rabbis, of course, are rejected. So yeah, the women is another issue that's going to be very important. All right, well, let's keep talking because I think as we keep talking and sharing, and everybody on Facebook, if you have any ideas about what we can do, please share them with us. Write your posts on Facebook, and let's have hope. Let's keep hope alive. Let's have hope alive. All right, we're going to see this video now on Al Jazeera. And if you want to leave the meeting, that's fine. It's about 20 minutes, but I think it's a very important video. Again, it's discussing the consequences of this government with even more detail.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed.
thank you, Jackie.
Months of political
Yeah.
wrangling, Israel's most right-wing and religiously conservative government in the country's history has been sworn in. The coalition is being led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who returns as prime minister for a sixth term. His appointment comes 18 months after he was ousted from power, and while he's facing corruption charges. Netanyahu says national security will continue to be his top priority. He says he also wants to normalize relations with more Arab countries and expand illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. Most of the important ministerial posts have been filled by conservative-leaning or ultra-Orthodox politicians.
We have four main goals, which are defined in my speech. I will repeat them because they are important. First of all, stop Iran. This is an existential question. First of all, we care about existence and security. Second, to restore security and governance within the state of Israel. Third thing, take care of the cost of living and the housing crisis. The fourth thing, and I believe it is also within reach, is to dramatically expand the circle of peace.
Last year, we saw a lot of mistakes from the outgoing government, and today we come back with a lot of energy to change the reality for good in Israel.
Let's take a look at Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the ideology of his new government. The 73-year-old leader joined the Likud party in 1988. His first role in government was as deputy foreign minister. In 1993, he was elected party leader. During the 90s, he started Israel on a path towards a free market economy. His government worked with Palestinians on security. He later conditionally agreed to a two-state solution. The new Israeli coalition is deeply conservative. Its members come from ultra-nationalist and ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties.
Do this brilliant hearing hack before going to bed tonight to improve your hearing.
And dangers of doing YouTube.
As you sleep. Did you know that hearing impairments have nothing to do with your ears?
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our three guests from West Jerusalem. Fleur Hassan Nahum, she is the deputy mayor of Jerusalem and a member of the Likud party. From Rehovot, Ofer Kasif, he's an Israeli politician and member of the Hadash movement. And from Ramallah, Mustafa Barghouti, he's the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative and former Palestinian Information Minister. A warm welcome to you all, and thanks for joining us today on Inside Story. Fleur, let me start with you today. From your perspective, what are the intentions of this new government? And are you at all concerned about the fact that this is the most far-right, religiously conservative government in Israel's history?
So good afternoon. First of all, I want to say that I'm not concerned at all. I'm glad that we have the government, Likud-led government. And I think in the last year, with the divisions that we've seen in the government that was here earlier, they couldn't make one single decision because of the very, very contradicting views that the different members of that same government has. It's good that we finally have a stable government here in Israel. And I believe that there will be two major policy drives in this government, and that will be dealing with the threat from Iran, a threat that gets bigger every day as they continue to slaughter their own people. And the second is the continuation and the development and the growth of the Abraham Accords.
Mustafa Barghouti, most of the important ministerial posts have been filled by conservative-leaning or ultra-Orthodox politicians. What does all this mean for the so-called peace process with the Palestinians?
This is the death of the peace process. Netanyahu has made sure to kill it previously in previous governments. And this new government is the most racist, the most extreme, the most right-wing, the most fundamentalist. And not only the worst government in the history of this region, but also it includes fascists like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Those people have been accused of terrorism before, even in Israeli courts. And the movement they used to belong to, Kahana movement, was classified as a terrorist movement in the United States and in Israel. This man who was Ben-Gvir, who was not allowed to serve in the Israeli army when he was 18 years old because of his extremism, is now the security minister of this government. This government declares openly and bluntly that its main goal is to annex the West Bank and to expand settlements at a rate that is that never happened before. What does that mean? That means the killing of the possibility of the so-called two-state solution, preventing Palestinians from the right of becoming free from occupation, and preventing them from having a state of their own, and also consolidating a system of racism based on what this government declared, that the land of historic Palestine, what they call Eretz Israel, is exclusive only for Jewish people. That means they are consolidating a system of apartheid. The picture is very clear.
Ofer, I saw you reacting to some of what Mustafa Barghouti was saying there. I've heard you say before today that it's your view that Israel is heading in a very dangerous direction. Where do you see things going from here, and just how concerned are you?
First of all, I'm very concerned, even anxious, and I will be even sharper than my friend Mustafa Barghouti. This government is pursuing by legislation, by changing the public discourse, This government actually carries out a coup d'etat. It is changing the regime, not only the government. It is going to be a full-fledged fascist regime with neo-Nazi components, and I want to emphasize that. The so-called party, the so-called religious Zionism party, consists not only of, as I said, full-fledged fascists, but also of neo-Nazis. Ben-Gvir is a neo-Nazi thug. They have not only, they don't only support the ongoing malicious, murderous occupation and apartheid that Israel has been carrying on for ages now, but also supports a racial theory, Jewish supremacy, Jewish supremacism. This is what the government, this government, this is the character of this government. This is a very dangerous situation, which I hope we continue our struggle, of course, in Hadash, in the parliament, and in the streets against this fascist government, against this coup d'etat, against the occupation, and against their plans to exile and to carry ethnic cleansing of the indigenous Palestinian people. We will not let them do that, but we do need the international community on our side. We will not succeed stopping those crimes if the international community doesn't stand with us.
Fleur, you heard Ofer Kassif there calling this a coup d'etat. He said that this was a full-fledged fascist regime, and I saw you reacting to that. You looked like you wanted to jump in, so go ahead.
Well, I don't understand. Mr. Kassif doesn't understand what democracy looks like. He's calling for a coup d'etat because this is really how the Israeli public voted. And what we have to do is analyze why the Israeli public voted the way that they did, because a year ago they voted for a very different government, and this is the system that we're living in. And the main reason that people got fed up of many things that Mr. Kassif wants to ignore and pretend that don't exist, and a Palestinian Authority friend also wants to ignore and pretend it doesn't exist. Let's start with the Palestinian Authority representative. If this is such a horrible fascist government, then why didn't the Palestinian Authority make peace when they could have, with the Rabin government, with the Ehud Barak's government, with the Ehud Olmert's government? There were governments that looked very, very different, and still the rejection.
Because your governments wanted to keep occupation.
Excuse me, I let you finish. The rejection of the Palestinian Authority is the reason we don't have peace. Because ultimately the Palestinian Authority
and what about annexing the West Bank? Why do you want to annex the West Bank?
Mustafa
The
Barghouti,
existence of it. I think that I deserve to finish my point.
I'm just saying,
what,
Fleur, I'm just saying, Fleur, I'm just saying that I'm going to let you finish your point.
My point without interruptions. I think I deserve to finish my point without interruption. The Palestinian Authority, the reason we don't have peace today, and this is what everybody keeps forgetting or ignoring or sweeping under the carpet, is because the Palestinian leadership still not accepted emotionally the existence of a Jewish state. This is not about not having a Palestinian state. This is about accepting that we're not going anywhere. And so the Rabin government, which was a left-wing government, that wasn't good enough. And the Ehud Olmert's government, which was more of a right-wing government and still gave them 97% of what they said that they wanted, still wasn't good enough. And Ehud Barak's government, before the Olmert government, which was a left-wing government, still wasn't good enough. So what do you want the Israeli public to do when you've made it clear that it doesn't matter what government we had, you're not ready to sit down and talk about this?
And Fleur,
it's just
Fleur, I need to go. Please, everybody, I'm going to let Mustafa Barghouti reply now. Before I did that, Fleur, I was trying to say before that I was going to let you finish your point and then give the floor to Mustafa Barghouti if you had allowed me to finish what I was saying. Now, Mustafa Barghouti, please go ahead.
Well, your guest is just telling lies. And of course, this is the usual narrative, the rubbish narrative that the Likud party keeps spreading. Anybody who wants to know reality, all they need is to read the program of this new Israeli government. Palestinians never hid away from peace. It was the Israeli governments who continuously wanted to keep occupation of East Jerusalem, wanted to keep occupation of Jordan Valley, did not want Palestinians to have real sovereignty, and that's why we don't have peace. It was Netanyahu, the leader of the party of your guest, who blocked all peace talks since 1996. To know their program, you can just look at what they say. They say they want to annex the West Bank. How can you have peace if you want to annex the Palestinian territory of the West Bank? How can we have peace if the whole land of what they call Eretz Israel, which is Palestine, is exclusive for Jewish people only? How can we have peace when you have fascists like Ben Gvir and Smotrich in charge not only of security, but of settlement activities, and when they are calling for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians? Why we don't have peace? Because Israel and the Israeli groups have conducted the worst act of ethnic cleansing in 1948, which your guest would deny, when more than 70% of Palestinians were displaced from their homeland. Why they are not allowing these refugees to come back to their homeland? Why did they destroy 530 Palestinian villages? Why are they preventing us from being free from their occupation? She speaks about Iran. The issue here is not Iran. The issue here is their occupation of Palestinian land. The issue here is that they have established a system of apartheid and racial discrimination. And that should be a cause and reason for establishing sanctions and boycott of this Israeli government, which, as I said, the most racist, the most extreme, includes fascists in it, and it is going to build the road towards an explosion, not only here, but in the whole region.
Ofer, I saw you wanted to jump in before. I do want to ask you, though, you mentioned in your last answer that you were hoping to get the international community on your side. What does that look like? What must the international community do from your point of view? But also, I want to ask you about the fact that there are many who are concerned right now that Israel's global standing might be damaged by this new government. Do you expect that it will?
I expect to the extent that I hope that it will, because that's what part of the solution. I have to say a few words regarding the former speaker, the things that the former speakers said, if I may. On top of the lies that the primary speaker, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, said, we have to emphasize, I agree with and endorse what every word that Mustafa Barghouti said. But I would like to add one thing is that this government and most of the parts of this government don't care about security or no security. They don't care if the Palestinians are free or the Palestinians posing any kind of a threat to the Israeli people, which they are not. They only care about what they conceive, their fundamentalist fascist perception that God, as it were, promised the land to the Jewish people. And because of that, they are entitled to control the whole land by deporting or ethnic cleansing the indigenous Palestinians or even kill them. It's not, and this is exactly explicitly what Smotrich and Ben Gvir have been saying for so many years. They think that Israel, as a Jewish state, should control the whole land and make the Palestinians slaves. And if they don't accept their lot, they should be killed or exiled. Because God, as it were, promised the land to the Jewish people. That's the point. It has nothing to do with security. The main threat to the region, to the world, and of course to the Palestinians and the Israeli is not Iran, which I do not sympathize, by the way. It is the Israeli government itself. And if Israel is so interested in democracy, in rights, so why, in addition to the occupation, in addition to other crimes it's been carrying out, why now under this government, this specific government already declared that it's going to revoke law that bars racist blocks in parliament? What does it have to do with the threat, as it were, that the Palestinian cause to Israel? And why do they want to enact a discrimination or to amend the discrimination law so it will allow businesses and doctors to refuse service people like Arabs or disabled or LGBT? Why do they support gender segregation? Why do they support the superseding clause that will abolish the High Court and eliminate the independent judicial system? Why? Because this is a fascist government with neo-Nazi components.
I'm sorry.
And the international community, if I just finish one sentence with your permission, the international community must understand that it should stop this madness. Because if the international community does not stop this madness, does not lead to the elimination of the occupation, to the liberation of the Palestinian people, eventually, not only the Palestinians and the Israelis in the Middle East are going to pay the price, but the whole world. We are sitting on a volcano that's going to explode, and the blame will be the international community's one as well.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are starting to run out of time. Fleur, I see that you want to jump in, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead.
I just find it extremely sad how Mr. Katzif, who obviously does not believe in a Jewish state for the Jewish people, side by side with the Palestinian state. Obviously, that's not what he believes in. And of course, neither does the Palestinian Authority representative. We're not talking about 67. We're not talking about occupied lands. We're talking about the very existence of Israel that these two other panelists do not even accept. So this seems like a bit of an empty debate, because if they don't accept that Jewish people deserve their own homeland in our ancestral homeland, then this debate really seems pretty empty. And in fact, Mr. Katzif should not even be allowed to be a member of Knesset if he doesn't believe in a Jewish and democratic state. Which obviously he doesn't. But ultimately, I think that the sadder thing, if you let me finish my point, the even sadder thing is how.
Now you can see. If you just let Fleur, finish her point, yeah, go ahead.
He spoke at length and nobody interrupted him.
Go ahead.
But what I think that is the saddest thing about the whole thing, and this is why the Abraham Accords is so important, is because for 75 years, the Palestinian leadership has not taken responsibility for one thing or for anything. Everything is always the blame of Israel. We fight defensive wars that we did not start. Somehow it's our fault. We leave the Gaza Strip and we leave the land to the Palestinians. We get rockets and somehow that's our fault. And this infantilization of the Palestinian people taking all responsibility from their shoulders is actually the real racism here. Thank you very much.
Mustafa Barghouti, you in the past have said that all Palestinian forces should join together in a bid to boycott and isolate this new Israeli leadership. Is that going to happen? What are you hearing from various Palestinian political groups and factions?
Yes, of course. I think now the formation of this new Israeli government, which is very dangerous one, not only for Palestinians, but also for Israelis themselves, should be a factor that pushes Palestinians immediately towards unity. And I hope this will be achieved very soon, especially that now it is very clear that this new Israeli government has no intention at all of getting any close to anything that is called peace. But let me explain here. I think your guest is really self-deceiving. She's deceiving herself and trying to deceive the whole audience. She claims that Palestinians are responsible, but she would not be able to deny the fact that Israel is the one that is occupying Palestinians. She cannot deny the fact that Israel is the one that conducted ethnic cleansing against Palestinians. She cannot deny the fact that Israel is the one that has established, according not to me, but according to Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, President Jimmy Carter, and even the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem itself, Israel has created the worst system of apartheid ever in human history, the longest occupation in modern history, and the worst system of apartheid and oppression and racism and discrimination against Palestinians. So she cannot claim that others are racist when she is defending the most racist system in this region and probably in the world. On the other hand, let me tell you something very clear. I do believe that when she says, when your guest says that Mr. Kassif cannot be a member of the Knesset, she actually reflects exactly the kind of fascist thinking that this government in Israel has. They want even to exclude people from having the right to democratic participation and democratic competition. Don't interrupt me, please. For them, the Palestinians are all terrorists. Anybody that supports Palestinians is accused of anti-Semitism. If it's a good Jewish person who's voting for human rights and for respecting other people like Palestinians, they call him a self-hating Jew. This is the kind of racism that is even reflecting on Israeli people. And it's a very dangerous government. And I do share with Mr. Kassif the hope that the world would realize how dangerous this government is for Palestinians, Israelis, and the whole region, and impose sanctions and boycott on these fascists.
Ofer, we just have about a minute.
Maybe the world will wake up and realize the corruption of the Palestinian Authority government.
Laura, I'm sorry, but we're just about to run out of time. I just have a question for Ofer now.
In this conflict.
Ofer, we just have about a minute left. From your perspective, can this government actually last? Is this coalition strong or is it fragile?
We'll do the best we can in the parliament and in the streets to stop this government and to change it. I surely hope that the government will not last for more than a few months. It may be a wishful thinking, but we'll do our best to realize this wishful thinking. But as I said in the beginning, we do need the international community. It is impossible, it's unacceptable that so many states around the globe, especially the United States, support Israel blindly, even when it commits crimes against humanity. So I surely hope that the international community will wake up very soon and stop this madness. Because if it doesn't, as I said before, everybody is going to pay the price. First and foremost, Palestinians, but also Israelis, the whole region, and eventually the whole world. So it is not only a moral decree, but also the interest of the people of the world. They should stand with us and join forces against everybody who supports one or another kind of supremacism, Jewish supremacism, Arab supremacism, or whatever. And unfortunately, the speaker that I again cannot recall her name, she's one of the supporters of Jewish supremacism. I, with Mustafa Barghouti, which I'm proud to call my friend.
Ofer, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have run out of time. I apologize. We want to thank all of our guests. The discussion must come to an end right now. Thanks to all of our guests, Fleur Hassan Nahum, Ofer Kassif, and Mustafa Barghouti. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here. Bye for now.
Wow, that was great. Let's stop the share screen. And thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm sorry that that my cat knocked over the phone in the middle of the session, and my screen. I'm using a different computer, and it's an old computer, and that's what my Zoom screen looks like. So be grateful you're on Facebook Live. So thank you so much for joining, and please send suggestions that you might have about what people can do. I think Barghouti was great in that interview, that the international community has to join together and get sanctions and boycotts against Israel. So I think that working to remove the BDS laws is very important. So I thank you all for joining me today on Zoom Palestine. Sorry for the technological difficulties. Hopefully next week I'll have my regular laptop back together and we can have a show with less technical problems. So thanks. Long live Palestine, and keep faith and keep hope alive. Send us your ideas. Thank you. Masalam. Bye. So I'm going to end the group here and end here on our program. Thank you again for joining. Sorry for the technological snafus. Masalam. Bye.